So, a lot of lesbians talk about compulsory heterosexuality, or Comphet, um, as a thing that almost every cis lesbian, anyway, goes through. You know, when you're trained from kind of from birth by culture to be pleasing to men and to get into relationships with men, um, you're just gonna often just gonna do it without even quite, thinking, is this for me? So, and there's some great resources about that, and I want to talk about a different kind of compulsory heterosexuality, which is different from the cis lesbian kind. Um, but also, I want to think that there's some way we can relate them a little bit or find a little bit of common ground. This is not meant to be any sort of comparison as much as just a juxtaposition, a way to relate a little bit more. So, and I don't want to go into detail about this now. This is more of a little, like, brain dump idea thing. But, like, I often think back about, trying to date women living as a guy, and how the more I reflect on it, especially in relation to, or in comparison to now, I realize how much sort of torturous it was to try to be a straight guy. Um, because for me, one of the defining things about being a lesbian is that um, I not for me it's the sort of particular configuration you have downstairs is not nearly as important as you know um, the fact that I am identified with and attracted to the same people. Um, I have a lot of the same impulses that lesbians and bi women do, where you see women and part of you wants to be with her and part of you wants to be her. Um, and I anyway, I'm jumping around a bit, but like that's for me what's important about being a lesbian is that like my dating pool is like the same as my sort of you know my sort of gender support pool, I guess you can say. Women tend to have rely on each other to some degree, for support and friendship and camaraderie and things like that. But with lesbians, it's like this is the same group of people that I want to date, which is for me, I love it. Um, but as a guy, I couldn't do that. That's the dissonance for me wasn't that, oh, I'm being told to date the wrong people for me. It's the dissonance that was created by I have to date the right people, but as the wrong person myself. Which is almost reminds me of like the concept of the tail wagging the dog. It's like, um, but either way, what really wasn't working for me wasn't just physical differences, but also the cultural differences. I perpetually felt like I was, I wasn't ever going to be able to be as intimate with women and in general, my friends and my lovers as I wanted to be. Like, it felt to me like there was this huge gap, this just unfair and weird and divide between us. The people, like who I am and the people I wanted to date, it was like trying to bridge that gap, this sort of both physical and cultural gender gap. Um, was just excruciating. You know, expected unconsciously to perform certain roles myself, and being always outclassed by actual men who were fine dating as men. Um, so, one of the most euphoric things about being out now, and I barely even dated, but just how I talk to people and how I flirt with people, like when I flirt with women now, I'm still attracted to the same people. I'm attracted to more kinds of women than I used to be. But when I when I flirt with women now, it's not just as like, oh, you're cute or whatever, but it's also like we have this camaraderie, this quasi sort of sisterhood where like, we have a lot of the similar cultural struggles and similar aesthetic, of course. And so anyway, I I don't even know who else has talked about this. It's just that whenever I see people talking about Comphet, it's it's about AFAB people who are not straight or you know who are not into men, or who are into women, or not into men at all, being sort of forced into a role that was very, very uncomfortable for them. I haven't really heard it talked about the sort of the trans lesbian comphet experience, but it's like, you know, it's almost like we're both looking at the concept of compulsory heterosexuality from like a couple different angles. You know, for AFAB, for cis women and AFABs, they're like, the angle is like, I'm being told to be, I'm attracted to the right people, but I'm being told to do something else, to date someone else. Whereas from my perspective, it's like, I've always been attracted to, that's not a good comparison, because it's not a wonderful comparison, actually, because I just realized, like, one of the things that really was different for me was, like, I never had a problem being attracted to women. It was always just completely normal, and as a straight guy, it was not only normal, but very encouraged for me to express attraction in women. I guess the similarities between the different kinds of comphet, I guess, is whereas, like, so cis women and other AFAB non-straight people, the dissonance is where society is saying you should date men, and the little part of them is like, no, I shouldn't. For me and others like me, the dissonance comes from saying, like, you should straight date women. Like, whereas, like, I should be gay dating women. You should be dating women as a man, whereas I should be actually dating women as a woman. That's the way that makes sense for my brain. Anyway, I'm sort of running in circles now. I have a lot more thoughts, and I'll maybe make a more, a less unscripted version of this later. But I kind of wanted to get these ideas out there and just shoot them by some people. Feel like, I don't know if any of my comparisons are interesting or insightful. My main idea is just to foster sort of communication between people with different experiences, but similar experiences, similar to how I want to talk with more trans men, because they have kind of the opposite experience from me, but we sort of cross in this way where we intersect in a way of, like, seeing different perspectives and having something that you were assigned not work for you. Similar but different. So, anyway, if you have thoughts about comphet from any perspective, or if you have any insight into helping make this comparison work a little more, if I'm forgetting anything, or making any weird assumptions, please feel free to let me know. Like and subscribe. Alright, off to the weed store. I've been putting this off all day.